and then I better go get the pictures ready, or people will be real
Hi,
disappointed.
Beth.
Appreciate
I finally figured out how to unmute my thing.
Oh, great.
It took me 7 hours 2 days ago to get my husband, who's 75, his shot. They haven't even started under 75 in Massachusetts. It's a mess.
Yeah, different places are really just having a incredible.
I'm only 72. I won't qualify for who knows how long.
Why did it take so long? 7 hours? They didn't work by appointment?
Massachusetts is a mess. The whole system is a mess. You call the number, you go online, and it crashes and it crashes and it crashes, and you have to just be persistent.
Yeah. Hi, Bev.
Okay, let me get started here. I'm going to put folks on mute. As soon as I can find the mute all button. Okay. And again, appreciate folks joining. And we're going to be talking about the 64 World's Fair at night, which was one of my favorite times to go to the fair. I mentioned earlier on other talks, to me, the fair was a special spot at night, both from the aesthetics of it, the way the lighting, the pavilions and everything looked, but also it was really a pleasure at night because the New York humidity would go down, the temperature would go down, and the crowds would go down. So if you wanted to go on something like, say, General Motors Futurama, you might have a 2-hour wait during the day. At night, you could walk up to it, ride it, get off, walk right back on, get onto it again. So it was great. They had, generally the major pavilions closed at 10 o'clock at night. The fair stayed open, I think, until 1 or so for the nightclub stuff, which being 14 and 15, I was not part of, but it was always kind of fun to stay around. If I could convince my parents to let me stay. I don't know who's muted there. Everybody should be muted, so let's try this again. It was interesting, you know, trying to convince my parents to let me stay there late at night, but it was fun walking through the fair, you know, as the crowds were going out and things were starting to empty out. It made it great for photography to be able to get a different view of it. So let me pull up the pictures here. And I gotta share the screen, 1 second. Share screen, and there, let's see, there's the pictures. So share it, and this should be full screen now. So we're gonna start just by taking a look at dusk. Just as the sun is going down, the lights are coming on, and there's sort of a magic period of time where you get both enough light for the daytime and the colors of night to make it interesting. So I'm just going to hop around with a few pictures of dusk, and then I'm basically going to go alphabetically, you know, A to, you know, D or whatever, hopping around the fair. So Continental Insurance. Again, we're going to take a quick ride on the Swiss Sky Ride right now. Kind of interesting. You can see the moon in the background there, up to just to the right of the New York State Pavilion. Again, great time of night. There was enough light to be able to see things, but now all of a sudden you can see the how the fountains at the Unisphere are lit up. The lights in the Unisphere, we'll be talking about them more later. New York State's becoming lit up. The main mall going up to the Bell system, IBM having added the letters to light up at night, as I mentioned earlier. And again, it's just a magical sort of time at night. We've got the Africa Pavilion down below, New York State in the back. It's just to me, a really beautiful view of a wonderful time. Indonesia, looking over towards the NCR Pavilion, and Hong Kong down below lit up. And it's getting later and later, and you can still see a lot of people are still at the fair. Not everybody went home, but enough people went home to make it fun. And it's getting darker still. And here's Spain and Indonesia. Again, GE's lit up over to the right. So we're going to start with the alphabetical part over at the AMF monorail. We're in the Lake Amusement area. The monorail station's lit up. The Continental Circus, kind of a not particular lit up thing at night, but I just love the way they made the monorail station sides translucent, so the lighting came out and shone so well. And again, AMF was a big maker of bowling ball lanes and that sort of thing. They were hoping to become a big manufacturer of monorails, and unfortunately it never took off. This was the only system they ever built, but again, looked pretty nice at night. Down below, you can see an Arlington hat stand, little ride, carousel ride they had over underneath the monorail to keep the kids entertained waiting. We're over at the Astral Fountain, which sadly has been taken out. It was there. The fountain in the center was there for a few years after the fair ended. The metal framework and the cage was taken out when the fair ended. But the whole thing has since been taken out for a skate park, which for all the land in Flushing Meadows, it's hard to believe that they couldn't find someplace for a skate park, because the fountain would have been wonderful to have it on. I think I have a total of 2 pictures of it on in the days after the fair closed. But it's really a neat picture. Basically, the fountain metal cage here rotated. You had stars on it that rotated, and some of them shot water out. So the photographer really caught it here, well lit, with the motion going on. And the next, this one got out of sync. The next one should be a little bit more now. At different times, they would have to turn the stars off because the wind became too high. We talked about that in the past, that the wind would become an issue and drench everybody. But this was kind of an interesting one. Somebody did a time exposure, and you could see how the cage was rotating and the lights blurring from the time needed. But it was a kind of a neat effect at night, this thing going around. And for people that remember, it was huge. The fountain cage was a massive structure. So we're just going to take a quick look at the Belgian village, looking in outside. If you looked into it at night, it was well lit. Most of the streets were fairly bright. You could also see in some of these that there was not a lot in the upper story windows, because again, the village was never really fully occupied by anybody renting it out. But it was a neat spot to go to at night. And there was very little sign that, again, you were in Queens, New York. And one of the big things at night was the carousel down at the far end of the village. People would go down there. There were shops and that sort of thing. So this area always seemed very popular based on the number of pictures I have, the people that took pictures of this carousel at night. Looking down across the fountains here, we're going to see a bunch of views of fountains as we go through it. Again, what I really liked was how well they did the lighting on these, that the arcs of water going across are nicely lit, but you really don't see bright glaring lights, drawing your attention to it. They were in these water fixtures down in the fountain, but they were aimed to catch the beams of light on the water just well. Down at the far end, the Fountain of the Planets, spectacular water show. This is where the fireworks are launched every night. But even before the fireworks, and we'll see some of them later on, but even without the fireworks, the fountains just pulsed and shot and moved and turned to the music that was playing. I mentioned before, if you do want to hear the music from the fountains or the fireworks, it is on my website. I was able to acquire the original audio tapes that the Fair Corporation used. But these fountains were truly massive, and you can get an idea of the scale of them by the silhouettes of the people walking in front. In the back on the far side was the bell system, which was just magnificent looking at night. Giant cantilevered structure on those 4 pylons. And you talk about having a great location. Everybody that came to see the fireworks show, there was the bell system in most of your pictures. So great from a marketing point of view. Bourbon Street, again, started, we mentioned a week or 2 ago, started as Louisiana's Bourbon Street and then just became Bourbon Street. But it was a popular spot at night because of the nightclubs. I mentioned earlier the dancer Candy Johnson. They had famous musicians and folks come in to entertain there. So the streets itself didn't look like an awful lot at night because Bourbon Street really didn't look much during the day. But it was a popular spot at night for all the nightclubs going on. We have 2 views coming up of China, very elegant pavilion. Again, most of it was a giant Chinese restaurant, very popular. So here's showing how you can get different moods of the same pavilion with different photos. Here's one view, and here's the other. Again, people are up on the balcony. If you were able to get up there, you get a very nice view of the Unisphere and the lights going on at night. Chrysler had their giant engine, a giant car. They had giant everything over at Chrysler, and it was all lit up nice at night. So we can see the giant engine here. The Chrysler up on the top of the air filter is a little blurred because it's spun around, and again, you have time-lapse photography to get a lot of these things really well. But it was a great view. Their giant car, their rocket, the color scheme tells us this is 1964 and the rocket. And then they have the cars out on display in the fountains. One thing that was interesting was they had lights inside the cars that would come on at night. So you just didn't see somebody's dark car in a parking lot. If you walk by, you got a nice view of the new Chryslers and seeing how shiny and wonderful they looked inside. Festival of Gas, big pavilion in terms of the size of it. A lot of it was outdoors, but you had this bright canopy roof overhead that would capture the lights. And you could get a good feeling. The restaurants down below, phone booths down next to it, different colors that they could change by changing the lighting on the canopy there. And again, just a view going into it. This is again at night. Pretty much, I would think after the pavilions have started closing for the night, there's no people up there enjoying it or anything. But if you had gone to one of the nightclubs and you were walking out back to your car, you could get some nice views. Florida, their tower was all lit up at night, making you think, oh, I'd like to get a nice glass of orange juice. They did not do their water ski shows at night, which was nice because the poor performers probably would have been very cold for the most part. But they did have the 4 flamingos lit up. You figure these poor birds were on display all during the day, then they lit them up at night. I'm sure by the time the lights finally went out, they were glad to get some rest. Ford had some great views. Again, the whole idea was get you behind the wheel of a Ford. So by having the glass tunnels of the Magic Skyway outside the rotunda, you had wonderful views at night that made sure that the cars were well lit, both from below and on top, for a nice view of the cars outside. And again, just some more views of them going through the tunnels as they're heading off for the ride. A slightly further away view, this is from the Bridge of the United Nations crossing over towards the pavilion. And inside at night, as I've mentioned in other talks, you got to look inside because the reflections of the sun during the day would keep you from seeing inside too many of the pavilions, but at night you got to peek inside. More views of the fountains. We're going to be going down, taking a look at those. And my daughter's puppy dog is definitely urgently trying to get up on my lap, which I think we'll try to avoid right now. But again, great views of the fountains, the Unisphere, the rocket thrower up there, the symbol of the fair. We're going to take a look over at General Electric, one of the brass rails off to the left, dating it to 1964 because it doesn't look particularly filthy yet. We did some of these views for GE when we did the industrial area, so we'll just do a couple more. Again, the lights were controlled by a giant computer system, roughly the size of the office I'm currently sitting in. They swirl the lights in patterns. They generally went counterclockwise. They could also change the direction, go the other way. They could change to all red, all green, all blue. It was really spectacular to watch at night. Here you can see they've gone to a mixture of colors on the carousel. The Tower of Light is showing it's throwing its multi-million candle beam light up into the sky. This is interesting. The carousel has gone dark, and this was done on purpose because the fireworks are about to start. So the Fair Corporation and their lease agreements with all the pavilions around the Pool of Industry had the requirement that to make the most effective use of the fireworks show that all the pavilions had to dim their lights. So you can see there's just a few lights that are just visible, but they cranked it way down and you could barely tell that GE was there at all. Particularly nice view of GE all lit up in its multicolor scheme. Again, the Tower of Light, one of the brass rail restaurants down below. The little cube area down at the very bottom at the 6 o'clock spot is a first aid stand. Basically mostly in red here. And again, the Pool of Industry down below, getting ready for the fireworks at night. Kodak off to the left will be visiting there, but it's generally a nice nighttime view. This gives you an idea of what they could do with lighting. General Motors had a massive building. I think it was the biggest building in terms of square footage at the fair. And what do you do with a big building like this? Well, you light it up in color lights, get people's attention to it. So you can, in very short order, have it done in one color scheme, switch over to a bright white view to get everybody's attention. But then you could switch it over to green. You can switch it back to more of a reddish color. So they had all sorts of lights that were down below in the flower beds to go up to it. One of the things the lighting designers had to do is make sure that the lights were bright enough to get up to the top of the building, but not enough that they would be glaring or obtrusive when you were taking a look at it. IBM, mentioned earlier, they had added the letters IBM onto the pavilion so you could see it at night. But again, the big white egg lit up mostly from the bottom. The top kind of fades off into the darkness. But down at night, you can see down below a sign for the information machine. And people are going, this ran all the hours as the people were all getting ready. And it did not stop for night. It lit up, it slid up into the egg, and you had your show. Just down the road was Johnson Wax, the Golden Rondell Theater. You can actually see it's kind of gold in this one. And I got a kick out of the next picture. Somebody got a very nice angle of how the lights were reflecting off the flower petal motif roof above it. Lots of pictures of Kodak here. Again, the giant pictures were a huge hit. I have the article on my site from Popular Science magazine of how they did the giant photos. This one was kind of nice because it gave you a view of some of the exhibits that were down below as well. Again, at night, what was nice was the crowds were down, so you didn't have people blocking your view of some of the things that were, during the day when you would just see a mass of people. This kind of gives you ideas from New York State, looking over to Kodak, saying how these things were so big and so bright and stood out across the fairgrounds. We're looking from the garden area we visited a week or so ago. Again, nice and tranquil at night, the Garden of Meditation. But these prints really shone at night. Special reflective paper being lit by lights in those black boxes underneath the photos. A lot of people thought they were giant transparencies. No, they were giant prints. And just some more view of Kodak. They would change the pictures over time. We're into fall. I think this is actually fall of '65. So we went all with a fall motif with people with fall colors and pumpkins and stuff up on the pictures. Again, the Garden of Reflection, Mediation. Giant picture here. If you look real closely, it might be hard to see on your screen. You can start seeing some of the strips of paper that they used to put this up there. They were held up there by a pneumatic system, which was having air sucked in into the pavilion background, and it would hold the pictures up against it. When they wanted to take the picture down, they just turned off the air, and all the pictures would slide back down to the ground. But very, very visible at night. In this one, you can kind of get a slightly better view of the pictures if you look for the vertical stripes going up between, say, like near the lady's hair that's jumping over the jump rope. I think there were about 14, 15 individual strips of paper that made up these giant pictures. And just for the luminaire fans, picture a couple of those. Again, one of the semi-ubiquitous hat shops down below. Somebody was asking the other day if there was a pattern to the lights, mentioned that there was supposed to be. If you could figure it out, you're a better man than I. We're going to visit the lunar fountain. This is kind of one of the more minor fountains of the fair. But again, they really went out of their way to try to say, rather than just having this thing shoot out water and go 24 hours a day looking like this, what can we do to change the patterns? So we can change that at night. We can have the lights inside light up. We can dim down or turn down the amount of water shooting up to the side to shoot it up in the center. We can turn off what's shooting up in the center, and we could have just the water coming down on the outside. So you get a whole bunch of different looks to the thing. A combination of water from the center and on the outside. Mormon Pavilion, replica of the church in Salt Lake City. Again, lighting up on the top towers, making sure that you got the upper towers lit. You can see the Angel Moroni well up at the top. A little earlier in the night, you can see the fake skies that they put up to try to block out some of the Jane Parker sign. I'm gonna hop over to New England. Again, it's sort of the dusk window there. The lights are coming on. But now with these, you can start seeing inside some of the pavilions. So during the daytime, you just saw a sheet of glass and signs sent outside saying Connecticut. But inside, you can see they had art displays. That's what they would do, is have a lot of local artists from the state put their work into competition, be chosen to display at the fair. And then they were able to go back home and say, my work was on display at the World's Fair, and therefore the price just went up. They also had displays of guns and fishing stuff and grass work and other things that the states did. New York City Pavilion, the panorama of New York City. By this time, Dick Button's ice show is gone, and they've changed the signage. But I enjoyed how they did this lighting for both the official New York State or New York City colors and also the World's Fair colors of blue and orange. And for those of us that know it well, these fountains have not worked really since the fair ended, but they're still there at both ends. They look like the pipes are still there, and I don't know what it would take to turn them back on. Getting to one of our favorite pavilions for many of us, the New York State Pavilion, all lit up at night. Again, luminaries stretching down the road into the distance, lights in the towers, the columns going up, lights along the elevator tracks, and our little yellow elevator on its way up to the top. Not that down below the tower is the VIP lounge. No VIPs out waving at us, but wouldn't you love to have one of those lamps in your backyard? And for the people that don't know how big they are, these things are huge. The cubes are something like 18 inches by 18 inches. I mean, they're really, really big. So if you have one of these things that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cubes long, that's a lot of cube. And different colors scattered around the building in different streets and courts. We're up at the top now, taking a look. It was open at night until 10 o'clock, so you can come up and get some really nice views of the fair. That's assuming you weren't up there on a foggy night. It did get foggy at night. Most of the times it was not, luckily. But sometimes you would get out there at night and you could see how hard it was to see just over to Shea Stadium all the way there on the left. But most of the nights you got views like this, very clear. Again, Flushing Meadows gets its share of wind, keeps the place kind of clear for most views. Looking in the other direction, we're looking over at the Lake Amusement area. We can see again Bourbon Street and AMF monorail we've seen. And somewhere out there, usually off on the right-hand side, when my dad would drive, our car would be in that parking lot. And like thousands of others, when it was all over, we'd be heading out to try to find the car out there. But again, a nice view of Meadow Lake. Over about the 9 o'clock position, you can see something that's lit up with all sorts of colored patterns. That's the lighting effect they used on the outside of the amphitheater at night. Again, to try to draw attention to it during the days of the Wonder World show. The lights would flicker and run back and forth in patterns to draw your eyes over there. Looking down from New York, we have a view of Westinghouse, one of the pavilions that was stuck there in the state area, although it was a commercial pavilion because that's where they had been in 1939, and they did not want to move their time capsule. And then back to look at the pavilion itself, the famous Tent of Tomorrow is its plexiglass roof. Just spectacular, so bad or sad that it's gone now, and hopefully in some form of remodeling they can bring it back to life. And Charles Abar, who worked at the roller rink after he and I were just in touch on Facebook this week, he's going to try to join us and give a talk in a couple of weeks on what it was like to work the roller rink. And one of the pictures I know he'll be looking to show is him walking on the roof of the New York State Pavilion, changing the light bulbs, because this was all lit by lights suspended from cables above the roof. The pavilion kept very busy even at night. Again, if you had any sort of a group that would like to entertain, the New York State Pavilion would love to have you there. So you would have choral groups come and sing. You have marching bands come in and perform. So all throughout the day and all throughout the night, it was a very popular environment. Across the road was New Jersey. Not as spectacular at night, but still a nice view with New York State behind it. For our Disney fans, we're going to take a look at the most exciting part, besides the Tower of the Four Winds, was this sign for the exterior. We've talked before how it was a pre-designed warehouse type building, and you have to take your eyes away from it. So a sign like this really gets your attention, and I love the way the lighting is so brilliant on the white part of the sign behind it. But it also, is telling you everything in one sign. It's Pepsi, it's Disney, it's Unisphere. Come on in. So here's the ticket booths off to the left, the Tower of the Four Winds, Rolly Crump's wonderful design. Again, another night view of it. Looking at it from the Kodak Pavilion, again, it showed up really well at night. This was a view taken by somebody on the way back out. Again, the Small World attraction is closed for the night. The ticket booths are gone. Mickey and the gang are no longer running across the roof entertaining you. It was a much quieter time at night. Philippines, talked about it, I think, last week, a really eye-catching pavilion. During the day it was really nice, but at night it took on a special look. Again, just the wonderful lighting that they did on these made the top look like it was a flame. It was not a real flame, it was plastic lit up from inside. Again, those wonderful wood panels down below, everything very wonderfully lit. We're going to go over to the solar fountain, which looks just like the lunar fountain, except it's got a giant pole sticking out of the middle of it and something up at the top, which is supposed to represent the sun. And again, you could do all sorts of lighting effects, and they also had water effects. You had these fountains, you can see them kind of squiggling and whirling around down below. They would go and pulse at different heights and speeds. Water would shoot out to different heights on the jet. At times you would turn the jets off and just make sure that you get the whole sun effect of it. But it's just fun how you could vary the same thing just by changing the water pressure. And again, here we have everything going. The little jets outside are not squiggling so much, they're just going shooting up, but the big fountain, and this one was pretty high. I forget the exact height, it was about 30 feet or so. So pretty good sized jet of water going up. We're going to take a look at some of the international pavilions. Again, you could look at this and think, oh my, I might be in Morocco. Let me go visit the Kasbah and go into their bazaar inside. Greece, mentioned last week how they had sealed over the windows here to increase their display space inside. But in this 1964 view, you get a nice view inside of all the glasswork that they were selling in there. The UAR, Egypt, had these wonderful stained glass panels on either side of the door, which don't show at all really during the day, but at night they really pop out at you. We're at the Dingalocker Beer Garden, which was an addition to the fair during the, I think it was midway in the 64 season. So a lot of the beer gardens were, as you mentioned, popular at night. Lowenbrow, the ones were indoor, more Schaefer. All these had a lot of people that were being entertained at night and having some cold libations. Peek into India. Over at the House of Japan. Again, they did a lot of work here on signage to let you know, this was Japan. You can come in and see all the cultural treasures. We also have a gift shop and shopping arcade. Come on in. This was kind of nice. I caught a couple of the international pavilions with the Unisphere in the background. Pavilion of Sudan. And again, it's interesting how things will look during the daytime. Not much showing even this particular view during the night. It just kind of looks like white shapes and dark things. But if you start looking at it, it shows there's some colors in it. I should have put in a picture from the inside of what it looked like. Very, very nice stained glass window. You had all sorts of things that pop up at night. During the daytime, you might not realize this little restaurant or snack bar was out front of the Hong Kong Pavilion, but you can get your steak dinner, and it even came with a tossed green salad with Roquefort dressing, all for $1.49. Okay, this gives you a better shot of the stained glass. You can start seeing the colors making its way. This is another time-lapse picture. You can tell because the skyway up above looks like a giant blur going across the middle of the picture. Gonna get over to Thailand. The long building down on the left is where a lot of the exhibit areas were for showing you both the history and also the current economic offerings of the country. But it was really nicely lit up. I mentioned last week how it was actually a glass building with these colored facades added over the glass. Well, lighting it at night with colored curtains inside really made it pop out at night. Again, just some different views of it. And this is, again, you look at this, it's hard to think, oh, I'm in Queens, I'm not at Angkor Wat. Just wonderful design and styling of it. And one last view is people going in at night. Tower of Light, again, for nighttime, the biggest draw was the candle, I think it was 1 million candle watts of light beaming up. But they would also change the color of the pavilion. You can see just, looking through it, just changing how the color patterns work on the building would give it a whole different look. Big kinetic sort of sculpture out front, more different look at the colors of it. Again, fireworks would come on. They would have to agree to dim the Tower of Light, turn off your giant searchlight beam, turn off the lights on the outside of the pavilion, let people see the fireworks, and then it would all come roaring back into full power. Again, also the lights done to get the sculpture all lit up. I'm just really in awe how well these things are done, that they don't blind anybody looking at it. You really don't see a lot of light fixtures. You don't see a lot of beams of light crossing your eyes. You're just seeing the results. It's lit up and you don't even realize or think much how they actually did it. And again, a peek inside. It's closed, so there's nobody up on the escalator, but you can get an idea of some of what inside looked like. And again, just some look at the way the colors beat off the aluminum panels of the building. During the day, it looked mostly silver. At night, it was all sorts of colors. And the last view is the searchlights up into the sky. I guess it wasn't the last view. I snuck another one in. Okay, we're going to go and take a look more at the Unisphere, I believe, now. And again, the fountains going on. They narrow down in a focal point to the rocket thrower down below. Looking at the Unisphere from up above on the New York State Pavilion, looks like a lot of people are still out there wandering around. These water jets in the fountains would go at different heights. They would go up and down, make a sense of movement going around the Unisphere. You can see the U.S. Pavilion off to the left. This is just some nice views. Again, size of scope. You get the size of the people in front of the fountains. You can see in some of these pictures lights for the world capitals on the Unisphere. Here's a good one of my favorite pictures of it. There were lights there, as I mentioned, for the capitals, with also one for the iron workers from the Indian reservation that helped build it. These lights were done with a very special lighting fixture that was designed not to have to be replaced if the lights burned out during the fair. They didn't want to get into the problem that, oh, hey, how come Paris isn't lit up? Or, hey, what happened to the lights for, Moscow? So a special lighting fixture that had a set of lights in it that if the lights failed, the lighting fixture would detect that the lights had failed, and a motor would turn another set of lights into position, light up, and continue to go on their way. I have a picture of the fixture on my site. The fixtures are still up on the Unisphere, but unfortunately they've been, the power cable has been cut off and not lit. Today, you could do this much easier with LED lighting for a fraction of the cost of power, and you wouldn't have to worry anywhere near as much of the lights burning out. But they really went out of their way. Like I said, a special lighting fixture, I think that's the only place I've ever heard it being used, built by a company in New Jersey to the specific requirements of U.S. Steel for it. Again, the fountains down below, they never shoot up this high anymore, even when it's on during the U.S. tennis days. People just run out, they get hurt out into the fountains, so they don't run them anywhere near this sort of volume, which is unfortunate. Again, the night lights for the capitals. Even in black and white, I think the Unisphere at night was a spectacular achievement. By now, people going home, there's a few people out there. And we're off to the United States Pavilion. United States Pavilion used light in a couple of different ways. You had lights shining on the outside of those glass panels, but you also had lights behind them. if you were to go into the pavilion, and people like Joey may have walked through there, it was actually an inner wall with a bank of lights on it, and then a few feet away was this outer wall with all the colored panels. So that made the pavilion really pop at night with the inner lights shining through the plastic. And this gives you a good idea of how it works. So you have some lights at the top and bottom, giving you some color on the outside, but most of this is being lit up from lights that are concealed inside at this point. And some fountains down below. Again, the colors, I don't know if there was any particular pattern, how often they repeated themselves or whatever for all these kind of weird shapes, but it was a really great thing to look at night. We're going to head over to the Vatican. This is the Triad sculpture. I mentioned this up in Kennebunkport, Maine now. During the day, the pavilion was interesting, but at night, you really got a lot more view of it because you got a lot more colors from the stained glass and other odds and ends. You can see how wet the ground is. Again, the astral fountain is shooting away like mad. This is before they learned they had to dial it down. And looking towards the entrance, you can see inside into the main area. The Triad sculpture again. Looking down from the New York State Pavilion into the Vatican. Belgian Village kind of lit up in the background there, and behind it the lake amusement area. Telephoto view going in from New York State. Around the fountain of the planets, you had the various industrial things. Mentioned IBM was there. You had GE and some of the others, but you can see how well Equitable got their message across. Their name, the big numbers on the demograph at night, very well lit up and really gave their message. And the fountains were going all during the evening, getting ready for the big fireworks show. They were different jets at different height. Really spectacular. It's really hard, unfortunately, with pictures. It really doesn't tell you how the fountains being there in person was. You got the spray of the water. They were very noisy, so you just heard the roar of the water going up, come crashing back down. It was a great effect. A more distant view. Again, they did all sorts of colored lighting. They have on my side, I have a whole thing about lighting at the fair, and they talk about the submerged lights. You not only have to be able to take the heat of the lamp, but you also take the water coming down on top of it. You shoot water up that high, it comes crashing down, cold water and a hot lamp. They had to, again, make sure that all these things would survive the environmental stress that we're putting them under. Certain times, different jets of water would shoot up really high, again, timed into the music or in some cases into the fireworks. You can see smoke from the fireworks for the show starting here. And the fireworks are underway. They would mentioned on an earlier talk, they dropped the water level down using dam gates. There's a tidal river, the water would flow out, a convenient walkway would show up out of the water. They'd walk out with a hand cart, stop all the mortars for the fireworks show, turn the gates open again, the fountain would flood, and at night these things were all done remotely from a bunker over near Equitable. And you can see the tower light in the background. Again, they would change the colors, blue, reds, greens, whatever. Fireworks going off. Again, Bell System had a great spot. Everybody just got a great view of it during the fireworks shows. And the fireworks shows were every night. They had a particularly long one on the 4th of July. But they lasted about 10 minutes or so each. They were really a great way to spend the evening. And your evening's over, you can take a stop at an Arlington hat store. It's actually interesting. Sometimes they would seemingly drop the prices at night to try to get you to buy something on your way out because you might not be back again. So if this is one last chance to get your name embroidered free and a hat with a giant feather on it. But you start walking back out to Gotham Plaza, the main way to get over to the fair if you're coming by subway. Was also where a lot of the chartered buses would stop. Somebody up at the upper level looking down, taking one last look at the fair before they head home. Again, time-lapse photography, people are blurring going through it, but we have one of the entrance pylons over there, people getting ready to head on out and try to make the day last just 5 minutes more. More ghostly people scurrying their way out. But finally, it's time to get to the Long Island Railroad, and this is how I usually headed home when I wasn't there with my parents. And we'd have call it a day and try to get out of there and get home before my parents got too mad that I'd been out for so much of the day. So that's taking a look at the fair at night. It's a little shorter than some of the others I had done because I figured, does everybody really want to see 37 seemingly identical pictures of the Bell system or 200 seemingly identical pictures of the New York State Pavilion? But I hope it gave you a good idea for the the view of what it looks like at night. And again, I wish I had sound on. I do have 8mm movies of it, but they're all silent, and you really can't get the sound effects of the fountains and everything going. Please provide the link path to look at the light fixture you talked about. I have to look for where I got that, David. It's really kind of neat. It was the lights are basically about yay big around, a dome on top, and they're about this tall, and again have this motorized mechanism. I'll make sure I get that to you. Okay. Just reading through here. So, were there stairs in the New York State Towers? Yes, but you had to take the elevator up, and the stairs were only to come down in case of an emergency. They were not open for just walking up there during the fair. Okay. I think one of the shots identifies the lunar fountain was a solar fountain. It could be. I've been known to make mistakes. Several a day, as a matter of fact. Okay, any questions, thoughts? People like to share their thoughts of the fair? You could use the raise hand button, or you could just wave and I'll look for you. Okay, Jason, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Bill, you mentioned that the attendance really dipped at the fair at night. Is that something that's, across all World's fairs, or was that just this one? And why do you think that was?
It really is just like even attendance at Disneyland drops during the day. Disney World, people go to the park. You got your kids. Anybody with a 7-year-old or a 4-year-old or anything is not going to hang around until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. I mean, some parents do at Disneyland, obviously, and a lot of times the poor kids are so damn tired, they just want to go home. But, I paid $1 million for this. We're going to get every damn minute we can out of it. But for the most part, for something like the fair, it was going to be there next week. It was fairly economical, $1 for a kid, $2 for an adult. So why kill yourself? If you've been there since it opened at 8 o'clock in the morning, by 10 o'clock at night, you probably had pretty sore feet and were just willing to go home. So for the fair did not, years ago, Disneyland used to do something really nice. The attendance dropped so much at Disneyland at night that they actually had a program that if you came in at 6 o'clock at night, you came in for less than half price, if I believe it was. But it was really to try to get people to come in because everybody would come during the day. They take the kids on Mr. Toad, they go on the Pirates, and they head home, and the park was pretty empty. So Disneyland started doing that. They, of course, don't need to do it anymore. But that was the traditional thing where a lot of amusement parks and everything weren't open at night or didn't stay open way late because the kiddies all get tired and mom and dad were just as glad to take them home. So my experience has been at other fairs too, that for the most part, nighttime comes, people start heading home. You've got a long day. You got to get your car out of that parking lot, head out home in traffic and everything. So, you don't stay till 2 in the morning. I would, but I'm a nut, so. Who else? Anybody else would like to share thoughts or observations? 2 new messages. Let's see what.
Bill,
Yes, Joey.
one of my mother-in-law lived up on she lived up on Horace Harding, up on the Horace Harding service road, and they could smell the fireworks smoke coming straight up the service road.
Oh, I imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine the people that lived around the fair by the time the season ended were very glad And I know people, there's still people that still try to sue Disney for making them stop the fireworks at Disneyland. You know, it's the same thing, the smell, the smoke, you know, all the rest of it. But I used to park my car back in near where the fireworks came down, and they'd always warn you about, you know, you may get fireworks on your roof or whatever. You'd walk out there at night, it would just stink to high heaven.
Yeah. And the second thing, Bill, the in the pool of fountain of the planets, the ring that's there now, is that a remnant of the fireworks assembly?
The building that's out there in the middle of the fountain.
Right. Yeah, there's a round, it's a circular object that's in the middle of the fountain of the planets.
Yeah, that was it's a remnant of it that was supposedly going to be a pumping station to keep the fountains aerated. I'd love to go out and see if there's anything actually in there. I have a picture from about 1967, 1969, somewhere in there, where there's a metal ring that goes around the top of the building, which looked like it was supposed to be pumping water out to disguise the fact that that blockhouse building is out there. But I've never seen water actually pumped on it. I just have picture showing the installation on it. But yeah, it does look awfully tempting to just get a little raft and go out there, doesn't it?
Thanks, Bill.
Anybody have a boat?
I'll go.
Yeah, I figured. Okay, I'll go with you. Anybody have bail money? Okay, any other thoughts? How many people were able to go at night and enjoy it, or your parents all taking you home? So, oh, great, a number of people did go. Any particular thoughts or anything? Jim has a picture behind him of the fair at night, I see, so. Yeah, again, going at night was, I enjoyed it. You know, I have 4 younger brothers, and they would get tired. Sometimes my parents would drive us into the fair, and then they would take the 3 younger brothers home and leave me and my brother Jim, you know, getting home. We had the Long Island Railroad timetable in our pocket, and you know, there were no cell phones at that time or anything. So, you know, parents were taking a big risk that we'd actually find our way home. And they had to remind us, don't spend the money, you know, on food or anything. You need to have the money to get home. But it was it was a neat adventure. You know, you felt really grown up, a little nervous the first time mom and dad headed the parking lot. And you're standing there, you know, yourself to try to figure it out. But you know, after you've done it a couple times, it's like, go mom, go dad. You know, and now we can go have some fun. Not have to hang around with the little kids anymore. So Yuko and Dennis, they traveled from LA to see the fair, but unfortunately didn't get to see a small portion. You know, Carol and I were talking about that the other day, about how big the fair grounds are. If people don't really have a real grasp of it. When I was doing my second book on the fair, I went back to take a whole set of now and then photos showing where the AMF monorail station was and what it looks like now, and trying to match up street lights and benches and that. And I walked around just trying to match up the photos, and I didn't go on obviously any rides. I didn't have to wait online for any restaurants. I didn't, and I was barely able to cover the grounds in a day. I mean, we walked and walked and walked that day. I mean, the park is huge. People really have no concept for how big it is. And then you add in, you have to stand in line for 2 hours or something, or 3 hours to get into GM or, you know, whatever. Because she was asking me how long would it take to see the whole fair. And I said, I think it would easily take you a week, you know, for most people to come back and try to see all the attractions. Why, when we were talking about the international area, a lot of people said they just skipped it because they only had a day or 2 days or whatever. So everybody wanted to see GE, everyone wanted to see GM, everyone wanted to see Ford. Not as many people wanted to go to Morocco. So, but you know, for the folks who were there a lot, wouldn't you agree it would take you several solid days to see it all? It was definitely not a drop in, you know, catch. It was not like, say, going to California Adventure when it first opened. You know, you go over and you see it in the morning, and now at dinner time, you're back in the Magic Kingdom. So it was definitely a multi-day experience as opposed to just an all-day experience.
Bill,
Yes.
Beverly has been trying to get your attention.
Oh, okay. I thought she was just waiting before. Hang on. She should be able to unmute there. Okay.
I think I said this before on the page, but I don't know if everybody has heard it. My cousin and I, she was 22 and I was 14. We had no money. We drove down. We parked at the Florida parking lot and we slept in the car for a week. And they would let us stay at night as long as we wanted. And the Florida Pavilion guys would let us in the morning and let us use staff bathrooms to wash up. And they'd give us free orange juice. And we pretty much lived on our wits for a week. And it was the most entertaining experience. That was the first year. The second year we went with her parents and we actually stayed in a motel in Connecticut and went for another week. But yeah, that was, it was the most magical experience of my entire life. And I'm 72, so.
Oh, that had to be really, really neat. You think about the things you do when you're young that would kill you today, huh?
Can you imagine sleeping in your car in Queens today for a week? Two girls by themselves. We were just crazy. But it's the most amazing thing. I never gotten over it, never got past it. It's just.
It was on the World's Fair Facebook page. A woman wrote that she and her girlfriend did basically the same thing you kid did. Came down, they had no place to stay, and they mentioned it to somebody in the Belgian village, and they let them stay inside one of the empty buildings at night. So they would let them go around the fair, come back. They go up, and the thing wasn't finished out or anything. They just slept on the floor of a half-finished building, and they stayed in the Belgian village for 3 nights. So can you imagine that?
Yeah. I don't know. It was, it was special. We didn't have enough money to go on all the rides and things, but we saw so much and met so many people. Everybody was happy to be there.
Where were you visiting from?
New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, bit of a trip for you then, back on the roads of the day.
I had never been out of New Hampshire at that point in my life. So can you imagine? New York City.
What made you decide to take a trek like that?
Oh, my cousin was crazy. We'd be sitting around and she'd say, let's go to Montreal. And her mother and her grandmother and the dog and I would pile in the car and we'd drive to Montreal. And, it was just, yeah, as an adult, I realized she was a little eccentric, but it was fun. It was fun.
Hey, great to have eccentric relatives that take you to places like that.
Exactly. And I fell in love with Belgium and my husband and I go every year now. So I get my Belgian waffles every year, except last year. Hopefully this year we'll be back.
Yeah, Carol and I, having just got our first shot, all of a sudden we were last night start thinking about, we can travel again. So looking forward to it.
Soon.
Somebody had written me and said, oh, now that you get your shot, I hope you're not going to stop the Saturday talks. And I said, well, it still takes a little while for the stuff to build up to full speed. So we'll see. But it does feel good to get it. And knowing hopefully that's one more hurdle. Because last year, I looked at the schedule and I missed 2 days, 2 days of this for dental surgery. But other than that, I didn't get a week off. And I was saying, man, we had so many trips planned last year and all the places we were going to go. And it's, I know one thing, we're not going to go to Texas right away.
I'm looking forward to Joey's next Ferris gathering.
Yes, have to go get a Bronto burger.
Yeah, we're planning a virtual. We're going to try to do it virtually for now. Maybe in another couple of months, just so everybody can get back together because we miss it. We miss everybody so much.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. You don't realize how long. We had Carol and I had friends we would generally go out to dinner with every weekend, and start realizing we've seen them once in a year. For people that used to see every single weekend, now it's. But we did get some good word this week that the New York State is going to start allowing camping at Boy Scout camps again. So we have a big trip planned this September for the 65th anniversary of our Boy Scout camp. So I'm hoping to see you there, Carlos. So so we're looking forward to getting to the Catskills and fall foliage and all the things we look forward to for this year that we just didn't get to do.
Bev, we'll see you again. Never fear.
Great. Anyone else? Anybody else go at night?
Yeah, somebody's got a TV on in the background.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Well, I guess what camp? The camp is called Onteora Scout Reservation. It's in Livingston Manor, New York. And Carlos and I both worked back there in the '60s, and it's got the honor of being the only Boy Scout camp to ever close and come back from the dead. So with all the implosion, the end of the baby boomers and everything, the camp had closed, sat there idle. A guy that my college roommate and I went back, did a survey of the property, said, hey, I think it's salvageable. And then it was interesting, the Boy Scouts wanted to sell it off, and we found a clause in the original grant deed saying they couldn't do it without giving the money to the heirs that made the original donation. So we said, since you're stuck with this sucker, why don't we start doing something with it? And now, at one point, it was the third largest Boy Scout camp in the country. It was a massive operation. So we're running at about a third of our capacity of the camp. But we have now troops that come in from as far away as Nevada, because so many Boy Scout camps have closed all across the country as the scouting movement has been diminishing. That we have one troop came in from Georgia, and they liked it. They brought in another troop. They brought in another troop. So each year we have like 6 troops come up from Georgia. We have them come from across the country. So if you go to dolecotter.com and you want to learn more than you'd ever want to learn about a Boy Scout camp, it's all out there. But it's one of the things that are important to you. The '64 World's Fair, huge thing for me. Again, the feeling of independence when my parents would let us stay off on our own, go and work at the Boy Scout camp, all those things that are important that I, try to immortalize somewhere on the web. Well, thanks folks for joining. Next week, we're going to have both the fun of building a World's Fair and the gloom and doom of tearing it all back down again. It still amazes me, you think about, if somebody had done something like, hey, let's build Disneyland, and after a year, tear it all down. After 12 months, you can go, you're out of your mind. But the World's Fair was that way. I can remember as a kid being absolutely demoralized that they were tearing it down, driving by and say Grand Central Parkway and seeing pieces of it, being demolished were horrible. But that was always what it was planned for, was to turn it back into a park. So next week I'll start back in the days of 1940 when they tore down the first fair. We'll take a brief look at the fairgrounds in between where it was lying sort of derelict. The paper did a story in 1960 or so about how the rats were running around Flushing Meadows. Instead of park goers, you were just rats and muskrats and other sorts of things. And then we'll take a look at the building of it, and then we'll enjoy that. And if I can bring myself to it, we'll take a look at the demolition. So appreciate folks joining today. I hope we got Ken Carpenter done in time so he can get to his next thing. So I think he's gone by now. So, okay, we're gonna make fun of Ken. But again, if people do want more about stuff like the fireworks show I mentioned, I have the audio tracks on my website. You just look for the audio video link, and the fireworks are there. And you can also listen to the background music, that they would play. Some of the luminaries had speakers built into them, and they would play the background music. And all pretty middle of the road, 1964 vintage, Robert Moses family approved sort of soundtrack. But I'm also trying to figure out what some of those songs were. And so you'll see on there, we'll say, like they have a thing of John Philip Sousa marches. Well, after a while, they all start sounding the same to me, and I like Sousa marches. But if any of you guys with an ear for music can go out to the site and tell me what any of the other unidentifiable songs are, I would absolutely love to fill it all in, because we've never found the records to match, what the songs are and who actually recorded them. So thanks everybody for joining, and look forward to seeing you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah, thanks again, Bill. That was great.
So
Take care.
Bye-bye.